In our last video, we responded to Joseph Campbell's don't have the stylus going, sorry. We responded to Joseph Campbell's monomyth theory. Now let's respond to John Hick. All right. Hick, who wrote the article, Religious Pluralism and Ultimate Reality. Okay, we went through that little PDF article thing. Sorry my annotations sort of fell apart on that. Hopefully this will go a little bit better. But let's respond to John Hick. Hick's argument in stages. Okay. First, there was pre-revelatory primal religion. Mainly this looked like animism. Remember, there were forces in the world that people didn't understand, and so they just decided to worship and try to appease these whatever gods, whatever types of gods these were. Okay? Then, Campbell says, in 800 BC, we started this new period of revelation. And from 800 BC until 800 AD, with what's called Sikhism, religion developed revelatorily, I don't think that's a word, via revelation. What made religion religion was there was some sort of revelation given to people. Okay? Then, Hick sort of details this prophetic tradition that all follows the same pattern. Okay? The prophets all kind of worked the same way. All right? There's always this sort of tradition of when people receive this revelation, they go through the same thing. And maybe here we can think about Joseph Campbell's myth theory. Hick says that beliefs, though they came from different revelations at different time periods, they all basically told you the same thing. There is a God, and he is sovereign. He's in control in some sense, right? And he's the creator, all right? He created it. If he created it, he must be sovereign over it. That's, again, how this sort of works. Then he says, what religion is all about is the effects on believers. How are these religions affecting believers? Okay? And he says, basically, all religions have the same effects on believers. So every religion comes from revelation and tells people how to behave. That's basically it. Okay? Is that right? Is that true? Let's talk about Hick's argument. So this primal religion, the idea that everything was pre-revelatory until 800 BC, well, that works if you remember way back, okay, again, to our What is the Bible PowerPoint, I told you about a guy named Julius Wellhausen, and you don't have to know this specifically, but Wellhausen said he popularized what is called the JEDP hypothesis, which says that the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, were actually written in 800 BC, not by Moses. Okay? If Wellhausen is right, if this theory is correct, then sure, religion developed primally, it was pre-revelatory, but if God appeared to Moses on Mount Sinai, then Hick's timeline is totally off. Because if God appeared to Moses on Mount Sinai, when does this happen? Around 1500 BC. So if that really happened, then Hick is totally wrong about how religion developed primally from this point on. Okay? Now, is he right or wrong about this? That's a separate argument. We could deal with that a little bit later. But that's just to say that if he's wrong about that, then the thing falls apart. Then, this period of revelation, right, from 800 BC to 800 AD, where the prophetic tradition is following the same pattern, we might ask, what are the conditions that fuel beliefs in this way, where everything has to come from revelation? Finitude and flaw. If you are finite, remember Reformed apologetics, if you are finite, you can't know everything. And if you are fallen, if you're flawed, then whatever you do know is going to be flawed. Now, Hick approaches religion primarily through finitude. This is why his first step of like, oh, we should start embracing these religions is Hinduism. Because Hinduism, because it is finite, fills this finitude with any number of gods. With any number of gods. All right? It makes sense that if you are finite, you will try to bridge the gap from this finitude to infinity with as many gods as you can possibly imagine. Okay? The idea about beliefs. He says there's sovereignty and there's the creation or the creator, but the prophets that we read about in the Bible never stress one without the other. Okay? If he created it, he must be sovereign over it. The prophets that Hick is worried about stress one without the other. They do this quite often. Okay, there's all kinds of, we talk about the ancient Near East. Okay, There's all sorts of prophetic traditions going on. We can actually look at some of these documents if y'all would be interested in that. There's all sorts of prophetic traditions. If you go to Numbers 22 through 20, I think it's 5, you get this story about a guy named Balaam. All right? Balaam is a prophet that apparently has the ability to like divine things and tell the future and do all kinds of things. But Balaam is not an Israelite. He is not approved of by God. So what's going on here? There's some form of prophetic tradition, yes, that exists outside of the Hebrew prophets in the Bible. But the Hebrew prophets in the Bible are talking about a very different revelation than this guy is, where he's like, oh, the water spirits are telling me to do this, or something like that, you know. The prophets in the Bible, revelation is quite different, okay? The effects on the believers, this fourth step. Hick talks all the time about how religion has to be verified by its effects on believers. Tim Keller talks about he had this crisis of faith when he moved to New York. He started a church in New York. He has this big heart for cities. And when he moved to New York, he had this crisis of faith originally because he had a I think he was a Hindu. He had a Hindu neighbor. And Keller says he was a much better person than I was. So how is the Hindu who subscribes to what Keller knows to be a false religion, how is the Hindu such a better person than he is? Because there's all kinds of reasons that people are motivated to do the things that they do, to be the types of people that they are. All right? There's motivations, there's socioeconomic conditions, there's all sorts of, in other words, cultural baggage behind all of this. We'll talk about this more in the coming videos, but one of the things that's so striking when you go to a Muslim country, okay, so I went to Turkey in 2016. Went to Turkey. We were in Istanbul. And one of the things that's so striking is how nice every single person that lives in that city is. They're unbelievably nice. Okay? Now, one of the reasons that they might be unbelievably nice is because their entire faith says that you have to do enough good deeds to outweigh your bad deeds to get into heaven. So that could be the motivation as to why they are good people. I choose not to believe that. I don't think that's actually why they're good people. But that could be part of the motivation, okay? And if the motivation is just, I do good deeds so that I can get rewarded one day in heaven, that doesn't make you a good person. For more on this, you could watch The Good Place, as I've been telling you to do for quite some time. All right? Just doing good things so that you get a reward one day in the afterlife, that's not a good motivation, all right? So that would not allow Hick to say that every religion is the same because all religions lead people to be good people, okay? One more point on this. Implicit in Hick's ideology here, I forgot to put this on the next couple slides, so I'll do it here. Implicit in Hick's ideology is that what makes something true, or what decides what religion you will adhere to, what you'll believe, is where you're born. The country that you are born in determines what religion you follow. And that is true, 100%. That's absolutely true. But just because where you're born determines what religion you'll follow doesn't stake any claim onto whether or not that religion is actually true. Okay? It doesn't mean that the religion is true just because I was born in Istanbul. Okay? The religion can be just as false because I was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina, as it can if I was born in Istanbul. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Hick's two biggest problems, all right, especially in steps 2 and 3, in what people believe or what Hick says makes religions all the same, Hick creates an orthodoxy, right? This is what you must believe. That's what orthodoxy means. But that orthodoxy says this: God is a force in the world, and you should be nice. Anything beyond this is extremism, and he throws it out. He says it's too exclusive. It has to work for everybody. Part of the problem with that is there's no religion in the world that is going to say, yep, this is enough. God is a force in the world, and you should be nice. That's all we believe. That's all we think you have to believe. Every religion in the world is going to be more exclusive than this, okay? So it's not like this stuff is only offensive to Christians. It's going to be offensive to Muslims and Buddhists and everybody else, okay? Hick's orthodoxy is what we call a reductio ad absurdum. And you Latin folks will know this. it reduces everything to the point of absurdity. Everything just becomes so simplistic and stupid as to not actually have any weight at all. Okay? The second biggest problem, why is revelation a thing for Hick? He says revelation does happen. He's not saying that religion is false. He's not saying that God doesn't exist. He says, yeah, revelation happened from 800 BC until 800 AD. But why does it need to? Especially if humans are naturally worshipful beings, remembering back to David Foster Wallace and Christopher Hitchens, Hick affirms that. He says, yeah, people are naturally worshipful. That's why everybody's religious. Revelation seems totally unnecessary if people are worshipful beings. Why is revelation a thing? If all God is a force in the world, and you should be nice, you don't need revelation for that. You need revelation for other things. You need revelation for the Christian doctrine of what's called the incarnation, and that works vice versa. The Christian doctrine of revelation is the incarnation, and the incarnation is the Christian doctrine of revelation. Not only in the Word of God, the Bible, but because there is incarnation, because God himself came down in the flesh, then the Bible itself is revelation. We have the Word of God confirmed by the Word of God, which is Jesus. Okay, they work hand in hand. We've been dealing a lot with this sort of dilemma, this argument, this debate within theology about whether Jesus is the Word of God or whether the Bible is the Word of God. Well, they both are. And we know that they both are because they both are. All right? And if God himself came down in a human body, then Hick's theory falls apart. Completely. If Jesus is the Word of God, if he is God revealed, then Hick's theory is totally bogus. If Jesus is just another prophet, then the theory works. All right? So, our next question for this class is going to have to be, is Jesus just another prophet? There is a major faith system that says Jesus is a prophet. That major faith system in the world is called Islam. So going forward, we're going to be learning about Islam, all right? And I would love to be able to do this in person with you guys. We'll try to work slowly. We'll break it down. Hopefully we'll get to do this in person together, but if not, then we will go slowly. We'll work on it thoroughly, and we will look at Islam and try to figure out exactly what's going on here, whether Christians and Muslims have anything in common, what they have in common, how should we interact with this faith? What should we believe about this faith? All right, so that'll be it. We'll get these videos up over the weekend, and then these videos and some more that I'll post next week about Islam will become your topics for discussion board posts for Friday and for next Tuesday. Reminder, I want you to post your answers to the questions in the class comments. If you post them in the class comments, then your peers can respond to them. And that's what we're trying to do here. Because you're isolated and because you can't talk to each other and everything else, and because I'm not doing group FaceTimes with you, we're trying to foster interaction and dialogue via the comments. Okay, so post your answers in the class comments in that little dialogue box underneath the question, and then people can respond to you. And I will talk to you guys. See you guys next week. Thanks.